Okay. Okay, my friends, we will go on to the class. We're talking about um, the creation of the molecule and what is necessary to create it. And just to refresh people's memory that might be watching this, is in the days of Jesus, he gathered together 12 disciples. And he not only had the 12 male disciples, but he also had 12 matching female disciples. And blending their energies, the male and females uh, are the male and female energies are the two main energies that create everything in the universe. In science, when you look at an atom, it's created by a positive nucleus and a negative electrons that surround the nucleus. So you have the positive and negative, and they exactly balance themselves off. And when they balance themselves off, they're able to create a stable atom. And this is important principle. Jesus was like a divine chemist. He put together males and females in such a way that they balanced each other's energies off and they become something more than human. And they were able to go out and do the same types of works that Jesus did because of this great spiritual connection that was able to be established. And to create the spiritual flow, there has to be a link between heaven and earth, between average people or normal people here upon the planet, linked up through the Christ and through the clear up to God itself. Okay, so this linkage caused a great revolution. Uh, very many miraculous things happened, but the greatest thing that happened were they taught the principles that the Christ came here to manifest. And then after the apostles were killed, the basic concept was lost. And now our job is to restore that. And when I got the download on this, I didn't realize that how much in harmony it was with some of the esoteric teachings that were already out there. And I've written a whole book called The Molecular Relationship. It is free online for anyone to download. If anyone wants the link and doesn't know about it, let me know. And so after I wrote this book, I've decided to look into all the writings of uh, Alice A. Bailey, who transmitted the writings of the Master Dwell Kul, who works under the Christ, and just to see what all he might have said in relation to this. And I found all kinds of things. He talks about he instead of calling it the molecular relationship as we do, he calls it group initiation. And he talks quite a bit about this. And he says that a group, the masters have worked time and time again to create such a group that can be initiated together to a higher state of being. Uh, and they have failed. He says they haven't succeeded yet, but they have tried multiple times. And Dwell Cole, through Alice A. Bailey, attempted this. It's written, the process is written in the books called Discipleship and the New Age, Volume 1 and 2. And he started off with about 50 people handpicked by himself. And he was trying to work with this group to be able to establish that link between heaven and earth. So he started with 50. And after a number of years passed, it was whittled down to 24. And so he worked with this group of 24. And then others began to fizzle out and went down to 18. And then eventually they didn't work out either. And he made the statement at the end of the experiment, he called it an experiment, that there was really only about a half a dozen that were really usable. So, so there was a master of wisdom was able to select from a vantage point that's above what we can do here, in the fact that he picked disciples from all over the world and attempted to create a group that was capable of group initiation. And he said he was unable to do it, but he expects that the people that failed would come back in a future life and participate in such a thing. So he said it wasn't a complete failure by any means, because everybody in the group learned something and moved steps forward to that point of group initiation. The closest we've had to a group initiation that I know about would be on the day of Pentecost, when the apostles met together as one mind, and then they had fire appear over their heads, and they were transformed into a greater connection to the spiritual hierarchy, to the point that after when that happened, there was a sound of a mighty wind, and it caught the attention of a gathering nearby of people from different nations. They gathered, and Peter went out to meet them, and he spoke to them, and they represented about 16 different languages, and he spoke to them, and everyone heard in their own language. And they were so impressed that the group went from just a handful, that one day they converted 3,000 people. So they converted more in 1 hour than Jesus did in all his 3 years of ministry with all the miracles, which was quite amazing. So anyway, the group at that time just represented the tip of the iceberg about the molecule, because they didn't have the communication that we have available today. They went to different places. The various apostles went on missions to different places of the world. They wound up getting killed, and they were never replaced. So the experiment just lasted a short period of time. And so this has to continue. And DK tells us that he expects it to be successful by the middle of the 21st century, was his prediction he made back in the 1940s. So hopefully we can do it before 2050, but that's not a set date. The date will happen when we get the people that are ready and to be one. Now, when you think of it, it's really difficult just to be one and completely united with even just one person. And pick somebody with a successful marriage. Even with a successful marriage, there's normally disagreements happen within that marriage, and it's difficult even when you find somebody you're really in love with, to be completely at one with them at all times. And so to do this with 24 is much more difficult. But there's kind of magical numbers that make things happen in molecular sequence. You have, first of all, the trinity, the triangle of energies that produces a certain amount of magic when a triangle of people can be one or even two. And the next step up is 7. When 7 can be one, then there's additional magic. Then when 12 can be one, there's additional magic. And then when you have 24, 12 males and 12 females balancing each other, reaching the 0 point together, then that's when the tremendous connection can occur. And that's what we're looking forward to. We need 24 souls that can be as one. But first of all, we need the 1, the 3, the 7, the 12, 24, and then multiples of 24 as we move up. So let's read, the Tibetan goes through some of the requirements necessary to create this, the molecular relationship, or which has to transpire through group initiation. And so let's go over some of these things that he advises us on. He says this: one of the major undertakings of the accepted disciple, as I would prefer to term it, the accepting disciple, is to transform himself from a well-intentioned idealist into a man of action on behalf of humanity. And this is one of the problems of seekers. We go after the ideal, but he says we have to transcend the ideal. You have to do more than just study and visualize everybody's being connected to Christ or the love energy and so on into action. We have to actually do something. He says when the group can think unanimously along these lines and work in unison, then the first step will have been taken toward group initiation, which is the goal of the new discipleship. Okay, so this is the first step, to be able to work in unison and to be as one. And he says this involves 4 basic things: to be able to move ahead in group thought and group love and group power as one, to approach this magical formula. Point 1, the people in the group, it says, must have the possession and recognition of a united vision in which the individual in the group subordinates himself. Okay, so the group must have a united vision. In this particular group, we have the vision of the molecule itself, and we're pretty united. We would all like to be a part of the next great step in human evolution. That would be a great part. Well, think back to, imagine if you were back at the time of Christ. Wouldn't it be great to be able to follow him along and sit at his footstep and learn from him and get the united vision of what's going to happen, of teaching people about the principles of love, that loving your neighbor as yourself, as he came to teach, and attempt to lift humanity from complete selfishness to unselfishness. So they had a united vision pretty united. They weren't perfect, but they had a vision of what they were to do by the time of the resurrection. So we need to ask ourselves, do we have a united vision? And not only of the molecule, but of other things. Like one of the things that's really important that he stressed was the promotion of goodwill. And we produced what we called the Declaration of Goodwill. And we really attempted to promote it, but didn't have a lot of success. People are a lot more interested in problems, friction, than they are goodwill. It reminds me of this one guy was complaining that of all that of all the newspapers he read, there was always almost 90% of it was bad news. So this guy thought, well, I'm going to create a newspaper with just good news because that will be a lot better. And he thought people would really like that, but it failed miserably because bad news attracted a lot more attention than good news. What would you rather read about? Some kid earns an award as an Eagle Scout or about some train wreck? So, so his good newspaper didn't really take off. So this is one of the problems of the disciples in the coming age is we have good news. Matter of fact, the word gospel is often interpreted to mean good news. So when you preach the gospel, you're supposed to be preaching good news. Okay. But people are a lot more interested in bad news than good news. So we kind of have to work at turning this around somewhat. So people will become attracted to good news more than bad news. So anyway, this united vision is number one. Number two, he says, the simultaneous rapport of group members with the soul on its own level. That composite group soul, which is composed of the soul of each individual member. This leads to group integration on soul levels. Okay, he says a lot in this short sentence. Now, the difference here is that on individual levels, people that are seeking the higher way have contact with their own souls on an individual basis. And I would suspect that everybody here has had that happen one time or another to different degrees. Even kind of average people out there that aren't on a spiritual path get impressions from their own souls. But as they progress on the spiritual path, that impression becomes more pronounced until the disciple becomes actually aware of his higher self, of his soul, and he's aware of these impressions. The average person does get impressions, but he just thinks it just comes from his own thinking. As the person advances along, he becomes more sensitive, and he realizes that these impressions come from a spiritual source. Now, to advance to the what he calls the group initiation, the disciple has to go beyond just receiving personal information from his own spiritual context. He has to go beyond that to, let me read this again, to approaching the point where he can have the simultaneous rapport with group members, with the soul on its own level. And he says this is a composite soul, not only his own soul, but the united soul of the entire group. So look at the ones that are gathered here. Together, each one of us have an individual soul with which we're connected with, but all souls are one on a higher level. So in this group or any particular group which you're with, there's what he calls a group soul. So so we can be in connection with the group soul of this little group that we have gathered together right now. If we tune in beyond just our individual soul to the soul of the merging of the souls of the entire group. He said,
So you have a union of souls.
Right. And this is one of the essential ingredients to establishing the molecular relationship. Now, like when we have a meditation or something, think of how that feels different when we're meditating as a group to when you're just meditating by yourself. Okay, it's different. When you are trying to reach higher as an individual, you'll get a certain type of vibration. But then when you're doing it as a group and you tune into the group, the vibration will be a little different. What do you think about that, Annie? Are you there?
Yeah.
Yeah, when we meditate as a group, does it create like a different feeling than when you meditate by yourself?
Yeah. It's easier to go into and feel the spirit when we're together. I
Yeah.
mean, it happens sometimes when I'm by myself, but not always. It almost always happens when we do it together. More or
Yeah.
less, of course, but to a certain degree.
Yeah, you can only go so high by yourself. And it's important that you do what you can by yourself. But the Course in Miracles makes a great statement. It says, you cannot go to heaven alone. You have to take your brother with you. And so this is a really important principle, is we cannot go home alone. And that's what we're trying to do. We're the prodigal sons. We're attempting to return to the house of the father and the mother. And we can't go home alone. But one of the things that he teaches is that to begin with, the journey does happen alone. You the entity progresses along by trial and error, goes through a number of lifetimes, and eventually reaches a dead end, and he wants to go higher, and so he begins his progression pretty much alone. And then to take his next step, he has to grab the hand of his brother and proceed not alone, but with others, and then joining others still. And then the larger the number, the greater the communion of souls. And so this has to happen. And as a group, as an intentional group that gets together, we must focus on that connection with the group soul. Pay attention to how the group soul feels different than just your individual soul, because the group soul is a source of much greater power and connection to the spiritual realm than just you as an individual level. And this is one of the illusionary teachings that's among a lot of the New Agers. They say, I don't need anybody else. I'm complete within myself.
I'm a lone wolf.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm complete. I don't need anybody. I'm complete. Well, we aren't complete. We need each other. And this is an important principle. Now you do, for the individual progressing along, this idea isn't bad because you do need to complete the connections within yourself. But once that is complete, then the next step is to join with your brothers and sisters to create something greater than you can as an individual.
And I was along those lines. I was talking to a customer of mine or a couple, and they were talking about synergy and some principles in the book I wrote on spiritual philosophy that they had read, and they were doing a crossword puzzle. And I said, well, to put it accurately, each of us is like a piece of this crossword puzzle. We have innies where we're weak and outies where we're strong. And when we all come together to share our strengths and weaknesses with each other, we create a greater picture that can only be seen when we all link arm in arm together. And then they got it because they had that crossword puzzle right in front of them, so it was pretty easy to explain it.
Yeah, good point. Okay, number 3. He says the blended consecrated contact of the group personalities upon 3 levels of personality expression: the mental, the astral, and etheric levels of awareness. Some group members contact each other on one level and some on another, but the aim should be a close contact on all 3 levels at will and all together when the group as a group demands it. This is a hard saying, but later a clearer understanding will come of what this means and what it brings about. So what do you think that means? He says the group must be able to have contact and on all 3 levels: mental, astral, and etheric. It says some members contact each other on one level, but not on others. Let's talk about that. When he talks about the etheric, he means the physical level, or in the well, he talks about the physical as 7 different levels, and that would be the physical and contact by Zoom would actually be part of the etheric. The radio waves is higher etheric matter, and so we're making contact on the etheric levels on this Zoom meeting right here. So he says the first level of contact is the physical. You on the physical, we meet in the physical plane, person to person. We can talk on the phone, on our computers, on Zoom. This is on higher etheric levels. So we're on this first level right now. We're talking, communicating back and forth. And just communicating on this level is difficult for a lot of people. Just start talking about politics, for instance, and you'll find out that the communication is where you can understand each other can be quite difficult for the average person out there. But the first step is to be able to communicate on one-to-one on the physical level so that you can understand each other. The second is on the astral level or the emotional level. In other words, let's pick on somebody here like Johan over here. Let's say, how much do we understand how he feels about things? Or pick Marnie over there. how much do we understand about her situation, that she's dealing with a special needs child as well as Adam? How much do we understand about what they might be going through? And Rain, how much do we understand about how she faced her illness and was able to transcend it? Can we feel that with her, what she went through? Okay, so to communicate with feeling, this is a second really important thing, not just word to word, but now lift it up to where we understand what we are feeling, and blend these feelings together. So we, as a group, share certain feelings of spiritual love. And then the third is on the mind. Okay. We all have different ideas about what is right and wrong, about what we want to do. We must eventually, this is a union of minds that we must transcend and be able to see as one on the level of the mind, and be able to reason together and think together as if we are one mind. So this union on the etheric, physical, emotional, and mental, all three levels must be met to be able to form the molecular relationship or group initiations. Okay, any comment on that?
Well, that doesn't mean we all have to be in total agreement. I might understand Ed's point of view and grant him freedom to follow his own path as he sees fit. I'm following my path, but I can support him in his path, but I don't, have to agree with everything he believes, and he doesn't have to surrender his belief system to mine per se, even though mine's better.
Yeah, well, we all have to be able to tune into one mind so we can see why Asaf thinks the way he does, why Rain thinks the way she does, why Curtis thinks the way he does, and then the group goals must be accepted physically, emotionally, and mentally by the whole group. That doesn't mean everybody's got like the same color or the same sports team or that type of stuff. He says that these personality differences need to just be ignored.
Right.
And then transcended and go to the higher thinking and be as one with the goals that pertain to the group. Okay. 4, the ability of the group to stand united with no barriers between the group members of any kind. This will necessarily involve the sacrifice of personality reactions, ideals, and plans. At present, the varying ideals, attitudes, and points of view separate disciples from each other. He says, this must go. So, like he said, this isn't easy because he says the hierarchy has tried this quite a number of times and have failed because achieving this union is very, very difficult. And there must be no barriers between group members of any kind, he says. And you notice as we've worked with groups over the years, you'll find that the group may be going along just fine and they seem to be as one. And then some group member will have some problem, like they'll say, well, I have a problem with Jack over here. He's just not doing his share, or he told an offensive joke, or he 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 did something that was very selfish, and I think we need to throw him out. Okay, okay. So when somebody brings in a problem like this, where he is unable to overlook the personality, um, it has created quite a rift in the group. And when this happens, the rift stays. It's like in Star Wars, they call it the disturbance of the force. We have this really nice group energy, and then this personality problem occurs, and it just uh, creates a disturbance, lowers the vibration of the whole group.
Usually what happens is the accuser of the brethren is the one that removes himself.
Right. And the guy that has the problem with somebody else is a greater problem than the guy that's supposedly creating the problem.
The one that told the bad joke.
Yeah. And that happened a while back because somebody told a off kind of weird joke, and we had complaints about this joke.
I want to hear the joke.
And it created a rift, but the telling the joke wasn't nearly as much of a problem as the guy that was offended by the joke,
Right.
and wouldn't let it go, so to speak. And this is usually the case. The guy that takes offense is more of a problem than the guy that gave the offense. Not always, but generally that's the case.
What I've seen.
Because we have to realize that on the personality level, none of us are perfect, and we all have different criteria as to what's acceptable and what isn't. And so if somebody uses a naughty word, they maybe they didn't intend to offend anybody, but maybe somebody else doesn't like these four-letter words. And so he's really offended. But we have to overlook these what we call the personality problems, and stay centered in the soul. The keynote to keep in mind is keep your mind steady in the light. And it's amazing how these 4 points are very close to what I have been teaching all along. And it's very much of importance to pay attention to them. It's easy to say, easy to agree with about being one, but to establish complete oneness where we can transcend the physical and be one in the spirit is difficult for us mere mortals to achieve, but eventually it will be a very commonplace thing to achieve. Once the connections begin to be made, then everybody will want to get in on it. But until that happens, it is quite difficult to achieve.
Well, if we all focus in the soul and develop our higher centers, I think it'd make it more and more easy. And I think if we come with the attitude of humility,
Yeah,
and tactfulness, and I say that we don't give power to those things that are negative. We let them die without any attention, and only have an attention on the good, the true, and the beautiful, and the goal of the soul.
and that's
Well, in the class,
oh, go ahead, Curtis.
in the class last week, which he had 5 points, which correspond exactly to what you're sharing there. He says to focus on the work that your brother is doing for the betterment of humanity. And then you'll rise above all the little discrepancies of the personality. But to focus on how each fellow initiate or brother is, what actions he's taking to further along the divine plan, and then align with that, be supportive in that area rather than focus on any foibles.
Yeah. And I'll end with one more point, and he says it's extremely important that the disciple remains open to changing his mind, because as you progress, especially in this group, he says once you approach a group initiation, you're going to be changing your mind about a number of things. And if you're rigid and not open to being able to change your mind, you will not be able to move into group initiations. So what is there as we approach these changes that we might have to change within ourselves? That's the difficult thing for people to accept. And so on that note, any other comments before we sign off?
There don't be a bunch of egos.
Yeah, let your ego go and do the work. That's what he
Get
said.
ready for the great change.
Yeah.
Yeah.
New revelation.
Everybody talks about the new heaven and new earth is going to show up, and the millennium, or Jesus is going to come change everything. But first of all, we got to change ourselves. That's the first great change.
I thought we had to get ready for the Holocaust.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, right.
Okay, my friends, good to talk to you, and we will continue this discussion next week. Until then, may the Spirit be with you.
Was that Raised in Initiations that you were quoting from?
Yeah, let me give you the source on that. Discipleship in the New Age, Volume 1, pages 84 and 85.
That seems like it should have come from Raised in Initiations. Okay. Discipleship Volume 1.
Yeah, 84 and 85.
Got it. Good quote.
Okay, my friends, we will see you later. And then next week, we're going to talk about, now this was a quote at the beginning of the work with the group. And next week, we'll go over a quote near the end of the group where he's trying to fine tune it. So we'll go into that next week. Okay, my friends, we will see you then.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Awesome.